Don't take that part for granted. Because Martin Luther King is amongst the select few, you can count them on your hands, who broke into the greatest echelon of world leaders coming from this new space of ordinary, everyday life, simply because he dared to believe and dared to lead and dared to sacrifice for a principle. He is in that echelon of Nelson Mandela and Gandhi, which is a 20th century phenomenon. And so, he's not supposed to be that famous, if you think in a conventional manner, but he changed the rules of the game, and today, Martin Luther King is recognized as the prophetic figure that he is. But the third point, and the most important, is that this wasn't always the case. And we can never forget that as we commemorate him today, because we can never allow him to be minimized into a token, a relic, a myth, a hero, a legend, and then celebrate that and forget the man, the flesh, the bones, the experience. Can't do that with Jesus either, can you? You have to remember the suffering. You have to remember how they lived, not just how they died, and how they were celebrated posthumously, which is something we have in common. Because they were not celebrated during their lifetime or by their death either. As a matter of fact, 75% of Americans had a negative view of Martin Luther King in 1968, the year he died. 75% of Americans. He would not recognize any of this. He didn't live any of this. He lived the vagabond. He lived the man who was pushed to the side. He lived the terrorist. He lived the revolutionary. He lived the agitator. He lived the vigilante. He lived the thug. That's how he was portrayed in his lifetime. He did not live the icon, the prophet, the legend, the myth. He knew none of that in his lifetime. And so if you really want to honor this man, my sisters and brothers, we got to connect with him and not the image of him. We have to remember his suffering and his own life, and not the icon that we're looking at today alone, divorced from that. Because guess what? Martin Luther King lives today in our coats, and in our streets, and in our civil rights movements. And he's also today not celebrated in these spaces. Colin Kaepernick was not seen as a hero. He was seen as anti-American. Linda Sarsour, who fights for the rights of Palestinians all around the world, those who face genocide, is not seen as a hero today. She's seen by many as a terrorist or terrorist sympathizer. And so for us to join the bandwagon of cheering for Martin Luther King, the sanitized icon version of himself, and forgetting how controversial he was happy to be in his lifetime to fight for truth, to stand up for what is true, we're doing him a disservice. Back to the pop quiz. When is it the right time to do the right thing? Now? You're close. Always. It's now, it's tomorrow, it's the day after tomorrow. That's Martin Luther King. Pop quiz. If you can't fly, then you
try.
Okay, banquet. Answer loudly so. If you can't fly, you run. And if you can't run, you walk. If you can't walk, you crawl to the destination. But there's no excuse for stopping, because our lives begin to end not the day our souls are taken back by our Lord, but the day we accept being silent. That is the day we truly die. And if we refuse to be silent and are martyred as a result of us witnessing to the truth till the last breath, you never truly die. You live in eternity, in memory, and in the hearts of men and women, just like he did. And that's the example we're talking about. He is not a far-off icon or legend or a picture on a stamp. He's someone, as a civil rights activist myself, I feel as a brother in arms. I feel his breath down my neck. I feel his weight, the weight that he brought to this movement because of the sacrifices he made. And I'm reflecting on his challenges. I'm reflecting on his pain. I'm reflecting on the fact that not only was he not celebrated in his lifetime, he gave up his life for the movement. He gave up his life for the movement. And my brothers and sisters, we know, for example, back to the idea that real humans, ordinary humans, are great in their ordinariness, if that's a word, in their normalcy. And we can't divorce them from that because we lose that example that anybody can be great if they have a sad, if they live up to their full potential, all that they do. We have to remember that Rosa Parks was great, but she was selected to be in this position to ignite a certain part of the movement. But there were other unnamed black great women who refused to go to the back of the bus as well. We have to remember that some of the greatest figures in civil rights history, and maybe in our communities today, are nameless. I don't know who the greatest person in this room is. It might be on the stage, or it might be in the back of that room. Because greatness is not a measure of how famous you are, or how celebrated you are. Greatness is a measure of how sincere you are, how loving you are, how pure your heart is, and how much you do it not for recognition, but for the sake of creating a better world. Only God knows who that is. And so, we are happy to have these examples of great men and women in our lives, but they would have us remember that greatness is in the back of the room as well. And in every movement, you're going to have, praise be to God, Dr. Whitmore's, and those young people in the back of that march whose names I don't know, but who are no less great because they gave their time and their effort and their energy for this movement. All you volunteers who volunteered for any of the activities this week, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Everybody who's contributed anything, any movement, with right intention, and to be the best versions of yourselves, that is how we build greatness. Remember, if we decide to turn on the lights, ain't no darkness can take us down, because that's in our hands. That's something we can do. Darkness can't exist by its own will. It can only exist by the lack of our will. And so, yes, you can size up your enemy. You can size up the oppressor. You can analyze the enemy. You can complain about the enemy. You have every right to. But remember that the power is in your own hands. Because only you can turn on that light. And when you do, it's game over. And how do you do that? Through love. Through kindness. Through brotherhood and sisterhood. Through refusing to accept that we are inferior in any way. While being sure that we don't fall over the ledge into believing we are superior as well. Because you can't fight fire with fire, you can't fight hate with hate. I believe in 3 C's. Moral courage. You have to have the courage to be a moral person. Because oftentimes, as Martin Luther King said many times, the truth is uncomfortable. And being controversial is what you need to be, then that's what you need to be. Because you're not looking for a pat on the back, you're not looking for acceptance, you're fighting for the truth. You fight for the truth. And you take whatever comes your way. Whatever they call you, however they portray you, that's not your concern. Because you're interested in everybody, in the humans that you're serving, and their well-being, not. And so, at the end of the day, that love, that confidence, that lack of accepting that we are inferior while not falling into being superior, or feeling that we are superior, that humility, I believe we can make change in this country and in the world.